Welcome, Mike Bell. You're a friend and colleague of some kind, and we've been in touch over the past few years about men's issues, and I'm getting you on to give us all an update on what you've been up to, and maybe the lay of the land in terms of effective action for men and boys since we last had you on in December 2022. How are you?
Okay, a little subdued at the moment because quite a few things are, if like, on tick over or on hold. But
Mm.
generally speaking, quite a lot of progress has been made in the last couple of years. Um, we did the Men and Boys All-Party Group. Do you need me to explain that?
Just remind us who your role in that. You know, you were chair, I believe, right?
So an all-party group, or APPG, is a voluntary group of MPs and peers who come together on a particular topic.
Mm.
They don't have an official status, but if the chair of the APPG wants to see the minister, it's one up from the MP on their own, and that's one up from, a campaign group doing
Mm.
it. Um, and my job has been the office waller and the organizer of inquiries and what have you. So that's gone reasonably well. The one we've done most recently is on positive messages to boys in school because we noticed that there are quite mixed messages going into school. There's lots of individuals and groups providing services to schools,
Yeah.
going in and talking to boys about their masculinity, and we wanted to know what are they saying and to come to some sort of conclusion about what were positive and what were negative. So we heard from 8 different individuals or groups who do that, and they gave us a short presentation, and I was then able to compile, if you like, the notes from what they said, and what was quite pleasing is that at least in theory they all wanted to do something positive. Um,
Can I just ask you something on that? Was it the Family Education Trust did a survey, and I think from memory it found a quite a disturbing percentage of these people that go into schools were talking about toxic masculinity. You come across that piece of research?
I don't remember it. I may have done, but I don't remember it. This
I want to
was,
say 20% of them, but I might be wrong there. It was cited in one of the male psychology
yeah.
trainings that I went to.
Yes, what we didn't want to do, obviously, as an all-party group, we can't go around telling people you should have this person, you shouldn't have that person.
Yeah.
So what we were hoping to do is get them to tell us what they thought were positive messages. Well, what the messages are that they're giving, why they're giving them, and are there any messages which they know about which they think might be unhelpful? And and by asking them to do that and then compiling their lists, we came up with what I think is a useful guide for schools without saying don't do this one and do that one, because not only can they read the transcript of what people said, they can look at a little video presentation. So if you've got a school that's thinking, yeah, some of our boys are, getting a bit, some of their views are a bit worrying.
Hmm.
What do we do about it? Instead of scratching their head and pulling the first thing off the shelf that comes to, comes to them, they could have a look at this. Um, and also, but more than that, there were some good messages. I mean, particularly about the non-use of language like toxic masculinity or the patient,
Great.
or and very much along the lines of boys are already bashed enough, and some of the unwanted side effect, for instance, of so-called influencers, um, is known to be a side effect of this bashing, that boys feel um, that they're not being fairly treated. And some of the speakers could tell us, if you go into, if there's some cases of, you know, rape does exist, and misogynistic behavior does exist, but it, if you go into the school where there's 100 boys and say you're all misogynists, when 97 of them out of 100 aren't, then you're going to have the opposite effect than the one you want.
Yeah,
So
that's known as counter will. Doesn't
yeah, I mean, and for instance, the work we did with schools, finding schools that had closed the learning gap for their boys. When we asked them about it, they were absolutely categoric that on no circumstances would they ever either do it themselves or allow anybody to stand up in front of their boys and tell them that they were toxic.
Hmm.
And that what they did was, if there was problematic behavior, if you like, they deal with the boys on their own or in the group and in private, um, with the intention of informing the boys that this is, not something which is tolerated. And, more often than not, the behavior that young people show is, I mean, it is their responsibility, but do you know what I mean? People pick up stuff from wherever. So it may just simply be in some cases that boys don't know this behavior is. Uh, and the other thing that people did was ask questions more than give lectures, like saying, one
Mm.
person went in and said, uh, what is it, what does it mean to be a man? And gathered words
Great
from
question.
and then once he got the list on the flip chart, if you like, said, okay, what does it mean to be a good man?
Mm.
And these questions allow boys to think through things for themselves. And as you can imagine, most lads are pretty good, and most have a moral compass that can guide them. So,
Mm.
um, so that works out relatively well. So that was good. Um,
Great. So that was with the APPG on men and boys.
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well done. That sounds great. And that's
Pretty
now available to schools and anyone else who's interested, that report.
Yes, yes, we have sent it out once to schools saying you might be interested in this, um, but we'll see what to do next. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, and this year a strategy on men's health has been begun by the
Yes, I
government.
mean it's really a major thing, I mean, because people have been campaigning for a men's health strategy since 1999. That was when the Men's Health Forum was set up. But they didn't make much progress. Some other countries made more
Hmm.
progress: Ireland, Australia, Mongolia.
Have
Uh,
they got one? Has Ireland got one?
yeah, yeah,
Strategy, yeah.
yeah. And they're like on their second iteration. I remember them saying that one of the things they'd learnt was in the first one they had far too many objectives, and so they'd had fewer objectives. Um, so I think we did this inquiry. The APPG did an inquiry. What is the case for a men's health strategy? I think in 22, um, and our then chair, Nick Fletcher, put a lot of effort into making appointments with ministers of health and what have you. But if you remember those times, the Minister for Health tended to change rather frequently. So having made a certain amount of progress, it was then back to square one. And then it finally came to, oh, my brain is completely lost. Maria Caulfield, who initially didn't seem to know a lot about it, but then came up with this bright idea. She said, well, if I go and ask for a men's health strategy, this is going to take a long time to achieve.
Hmm.
How about if we set up this task and finish group and take some of those things that you want done and just get them done? So before the general election, there was a committee working on that. And my colleague Mark Brooks was working on that. And they started to roll out more things like and we know that men are not very keen to take time off work to do things. So but the evidence from wherever, lots and lots of evidence that if you actually take the screening to where men are,
They'll do it.
they're quite happy to take 15, 20 minutes off work and go do it. But what they're not prepared to do is make an appointment and take the morning off,
Mm.
because that's the way we've evolved. I mean, we've evolved to protect and provide for women and children. So taking time off to get a PSA test is like, well, I'm not actually ill, so
Mm.
this is all subconscious, of course. But if a little note comes around saying that the van's going to be in the car park 11:30, um, you know,
Mm.
then you find that lots of people go. There was a wonderful example from the Irish men's health strategy because there's a lot of isolated farmers in Ireland,
Yeah.
and they tend to have a high level of heart disease untreated. And so
Right.
they found that they took the heart monitoring to the farmers market. They'd have a queue outside, and even more remarkable that of those who needed treatment, 85% followed up.
Amazing.
So anyway, that's how far we got with that. And then completely out of the blue, I think it was last March, Wes Streeting, who was then the shadow health secretary, wrote an article in a newspaper, I think the Telegraph, saying, we need a men's health strategy. We were completely amazed because neither he nor anybody in Labour had shown the slightest interest. So we got all excited when the election was called, and thumbed through the Labour Party manifesto to find it not there at all.
Mm.
We thought, typical politicians. So election comes and goes. Wes Streeting's now the minister, and one of the things we noticed was that very early on, and I can't quite think. The word I want to say is unnecessarily. Wes Streeting decided to implement that CAS report saying that teenagers should not be given puberty blockers because it hadn't been tested. Now, I'm just an old-fashioned natural scientist, and I'm going, this is a man who just making a decision based on evidence
Mm.
because it actually goes against the narrative, against the sort of mainstream Labour idea. Um, and I thought that was a tough thing to do. And he's shown some toughness since, which is one of the things we discovered doing this engagement in politics is that you can never tell what's going what's going to work or who it's
Right.
going to work with. If you think, I'm going to do X and Y and then Z and A will follow, you might well be disappointed.
Mm.
But if you just plod on, suddenly things come out of the woodwork. And so after the general election, no men's health strategy. So my colleague Mark Brooks, where's the men's health strategy, Wes? And then just took it upon himself to write one. This turns out to be an absolute key step, and it's something that everybody should learn in any campaign. If you don't have what
A
you want the
document.
government to do, they
Mm.
won't be able to do it because they're too busy. And if you don't do it yourself, the department will write it, and then you won't like it at all. Um, and he elicited the help of an academic who strong in this field, and, um, and published it. And then another completely left field thing happened. You probably know Movember, the charity.
Mm.
Anyway, a woman who works for them. I'm afraid I can't remember her surname because we always call her Amy Movember. Um, Started doing what needs to be done. She started using some of their funds to do the lobbying necessary to get this over the line. Just lots of phone calls and following us up. Again, I haven't been completely part of it, and then we get the message that there's a good chance that it's going to be agreed in time for International Men's Day. and then that the Prime Minister is going to announce it on International Men's Day, which he duly did. So it's like, okay, so now it needs to be implemented. No doubt some people will read it and go, ooh, have some criticism of it. But in a way, that's not the point. The point is to get it get it in principle. The other thing is that not only do we have the document, they've also allocated the responsibility to a junior minister whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head. Um, so it's being officially added to her responsibilities.
So I guess that means it's not going to go away. It's here to stay.
It's not going to go away easily. I mean,
Yeah.
things can go away, but but it's substantially better than, well, how can I say? It's as good as we hoped, but we
Excellent. Well
weren't
done.
ex
Congratulations.
we weren't expecting Starmer to announce it, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
So that's one thing,
So
and
that was
then
last week, 19th
yeah,
of
yeah,
November. Yeah.
yeah. And
Great.
then on the Thursday, on the 20th, the annual International Men's Day debate took place in the Commons Chamber, and 45 MPs had signed the application, and there are about 20 in the chamber speaking. And it's interesting to have watched those International Men's Day debates over the years because initially they're initiated by Philip Davis, who's a conservative and quite controversial figure, and the Labour benches were largely empty.
Hmm.
And then suddenly it's the Conservative benches which are hardly empty, and people are talking in ways they have never talked before. So Josh Newberry, who led the debate and organised, well, he was the lead person for it, spoke openly about his own sexual abuse.
Hmm. Can see
So
that's moved you sharing that.
the time's got to come when people care about men. So much stacked against men.
Hmm.
And even talking about it has been taboo. Do you know what I mean? And it's just starting to relax.
Yeah. People used to get heckled in the Commons for talking about
Yeah.
it.
Probably by these same Labour MPs who are now speaking in favour.
Hmm.
The change is remarkable
Hmm.
because you get Labour women as well also being totally supportive.
Hmm.
It doesn't sound they didn't have to be there. It's Thursday afternoon. There's a backbench debate. There's no whip. They're only there because they want to be. So that's good.
It's good.
Uh-huh.
That sounds like real movement.
Yeah, but it's people have to keep up the pressure. But of course, it is now all the people who had all the information about men's health strategy but weren't able to implement it are now able to implement it. So it doesn't need us in the APPG to do it now, really. We were the kind of vehicle to help get it over the water.
Hmm.
I've done some work recently trying to understand why so many campaigns fail. And uh, it's difficult to do without my diagram, but a lot of the time you start off with a group of people who have problems. You could have them at the top of the list if you like, and then below them are organizations designed to help them.
Hmm.
And down here somewhere are the politicians, but behind them are the ministers and the officials who could actually implement it. But there's this sort of yawning gap in between. So
Hmm.
a lot of the time, campaigners are talking to themselves or having a video like this, or or putting on a conference, or getting angry on Twitter or something like that. But
Echo chambers.
you've got to create this link all the way down to the bottom. And what I'm able to show in my diagram is that there's this yawning gap. And APPG is one of those things in the gap. It's not a campaigning organization and it's not the government, but it's something in the gap. And
Yeah.
similar with the backbench debates, they're in the gap. Um,
Yeah, because you weren't lobbying so much as trying to get politicians engaged in as part of the inquiry into what was going on, right?
that was the first part.
Yeah,
Once we done the inquiry, it was difficult to get them engaged in the process of the inquiry. It's difficult to get MPs engaged in anything, not because they're lazy, but because their timetable is ridiculous. Their lives are ridiculous. They're jumping from one thing to the next. And a lot of the things that people say about politicians, you know, a lot of people have a dim view of politicians, but actually it's largely to do with the job and the media rather than with them.
yeah.
So one sort of obvious insight is everything we know about politicians, we hear from the media. Um, so, if we have over the last 20 years a decline in the respect that we have for politicians, people often attribute that to the politicians, but I would attribute it much more to the media, the way they present politics and the way they try to undermine politicians in their interviews
Hmm.
seem to have changed.
I think it was since the expenses scandal that it soured
It
in a new
did,
way. Yeah.
yes. But that was one of those things that what had happened in the previous decade or so was that every time politicians, the government wanted to raise the salary of MPs, the the media would make a big fuss. So they were very reluctant to raise the salary of politicians. Um, and that was a serious problem because if the salary is too low, you don't attract good people.
Hmm.
And also, if the salary is low, we know this from any third world country, like if a policeman's salary is too low, he's much more likely to be corrupt. Um, and we don't have corruption in the UK like you have in most countries, where MPs are using their position to, get a planning, to be paid to get a planning application or whatever. Um, so what happened was a kind of uncontrolled expansion of expenses.
Hmm.
Um, I think if it could have been presented like that, um, MPs wouldn't have lost quite so much status. But the media had a field day. I mean, it's not that the expenses were unreasonable, but it's just that that's how it had developed. So that one of the things you could do was if you lived out, if you were from outside London, you could buy a property in London
Hmm.
and use expenses to pay the mortgage, which meant that the government was effectively buying you a house. But
It's
lots and
just not
lots.
transparent, is it? That's why. Yeah.
No,
Anyway, okay. So,
I mean, just as an aside, one of the first things that Lee Kuan Yew, do you know who I mean, the leader of Singapore?
I think doesn't the Singapore Prime Minister get paid over £1 million,
I
something like
don't know
that?
the figure, but one of the things that he decided when setting up the government of Singapore was that the parliamentarians would be well paid to make
Yeah,
didn't
it's a
happen.
sound. It's overall it can't be that much to pay them decently, and then um, also I think they've got a flat rate of tax as well, and
I
they
don't
have
know.
higher revenue as a result of just having a low flat rate. So it's not really worth trying to fiddle your taxes. People, individuals, and companies just don't bother trying to avoid tax.
I'm afraid I don't know the details. It's
Anyway, we're going off on a bit of a tangent there, but let's
yeah.
come back to the state of play then here. So, um, yeah, you've had this unexpected win with the Prime Minister announcing last week the men's health strategy, imperfect as it is. I haven't read it, but something something new that may stay then, and be there may be new iterations of it. Um, I was talking to a client earlier today, and he told me, I haven't actually checked this yet, but I was aware of one of the it's that woman that you were debating on the BBC about the patriarchy, Charlotte Proudman.
Oh yeah.
She wanted to remove
Yes.
parental responsibility in cases where domestic abuse was a concern in the family court.
I know what she wanted to do was to take away the presumption.
The presumption.
Yes, so
Are you
that
aware of anything happening there? Because I was told today that that is now, well, in cases where a parent is linked to domestic abuse, they then deem it's not in the child's best interest to have a relationship with that parent.
well, the law hasn't changed yet, as far as I
Okay.
that is, they got the kind of agreement that it should be changed
Oh
and
God.
scheduled to be included in whatever bit of legislation would be appropriate. But with a bit of luck, it might never happen.
Hmm.
So the law, as far as I understand it, the law at the moment is that if there is an accusation of domestic abuse, then the judge can decide whether or not contact with the child is deemed safe. That's the present law, because there is a general presumption that both parents, I mean, what they're really referring to is fathers when they say both parents.
Hmm.
Um, there's a general presumption that both will have contact unless there is a good reason not to. And what they're trying to do is remove that general presumption so that it would make it easier for the judge to give no contact to the father. Um, However, in the previous government, they've been trying to do this for 10 years and all over the Anglosphere. It's the same campaign in Australia.
Hmm.
Um, and it's all based on, uh, I mean, for instance, they come up with the data of 29 children who've been killed by their father when contact has been given by the court. But that's over 10 years. And I haven't looked at the things in detail, but for instance, far more mothers kill their under 1 year old children. We don't say mothers shouldn't have contact with their children because
Yeah.
100 mothers a year kill their children.
Also, just if we're trying to calculate the harm or the greater good, not seeing a parent is an adverse childhood experience. So
It is
definitely,
indeed. I mean, the other
yeah.
positive thing is, as far as I understand it, again, you hear different stories. The Pathfinder Courts, which are, well, they were Pathfinder a couple of years ago, where the family division was experimenting with a different route in the family court to try and prevent what was happening, which was the case was stringing out for a long time and new accusations were brought up.
What are
So
they doing to try and find a different way then?
uh, to 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 deal with the accusations of abuse immediately
Yes.
and with some now I am not sufficiently informed to give you a view as to how well it's working. But when we heard last year um, the president of the family division, do you remember his name?
I can't remember.
Anyway, I might remember in a minute. He said that they had called them Pathfinder Courts because they were going to help them find the path to a better.
Hmm.
But they thought that, in his judgment, they were so successful that they would be rolled out. So they are being rolled out.
Excellent. That sounds really promising.
Um, Now, as with lots of things, sometimes the pilot works well and the rollout doesn't work quite so well. But we have to remember that this is still the family court. So it isn't any effort to reduce the number of couples who go to court. It's just a process of trying to make the process less harmful.
Yeah.
Um, so on the other hand, if you remember, I'd also been part of an all-party group on family separation. We
Yeah.
produced a good report and did quite a good seminar just before the general election to like hone down what the key things were we were going to campaign for. And then general election came, which rather messed it up. And since the general election, we have got quite a few people say they want to be part of this APPG on family separation, but completely failed to find a chair. And I just gave it to a couple of people who said that they might do some work on it. After I'd done it, tried quite hard, I handed it over about a year ago. Just put it on hold and said, well, if you can find a chair, let me know, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And there've been a couple of soundings, but it is very, very difficult because it's, I mean, even in the previous iteration, it was virtually impossible to find a chair. And Nick Fletcher, who was just one of those odd people who didn't mind what people thought. But people just are running scared of the domestic abuse lobby. They think that if they do anything on this, they're going to get labeled. And
Hmm.
they just, this is my judgment, they're too frightened. So there is a possibility um, that it might get resurrected slightly differently. Instead of being all party group on family separation, it might be all party group for separated families. Um, and There's a conversation at the moment between Nav Mirza, who used to run the um, a charity providing parents, particularly fathers, with with support in the family court and what have you, and Lewis Atkinson, who is a Labour MP who's shown some interest.
Hmm.
Um,
Have they got
but
personal experience of this?
well, Atkinson, like many of the new intake, are is separated dad himself.
Yeah.
Um, but We'll have to wait and see. I don't want to put words into his mouth, and we haven't made a lot of progress. Um, it's a taboo subject. It's more taboo
Yeah.
than the men's health. Um, and you can't really expect MPs to stick their neck on the block for something that might get it chopped off. Then and that's the way things are. So
Hmm.
that's a bit sad, really.
Yeah. It's disappointing. And I was trying to talk to this man, Lord Farmer, um, when I was writing an article about prisons recently for the Centre for Male Psychology. And in the end, I didn't get to talk to him, but I did find out that more about the family hubs that he has
Mm.
been involved in. And talking to you the other day, you mentioned them. What are? Can you just tell us a bit about what they do?
Well, I think the idea is in every town there should be a place you go, just one place you go when you've got a problem, anything to do with family.
Hmm.
And although, um, I mean, there were some things, 10 years ago, or I can't remember, I'm not familiar with them, like Sure Start, which were
Oh
closed.
yeah.
Um, there's a big difference. The Sure Start, or whatever it was called, was funded directly by the government. That is, the people in the Sure Start Centre were paid by the government.
Was that Blair's doing?
I don't remember the details. I'm afraid I'm not
Yeah.
good on
Doesn't
it.
matter.
There were some supports which were taken away due to austerity. Anyway, so family hubs is a different conception. That is, the only people who will be employed, if you like, is like the triage nurse. You go and see somebody who talks to you, is trained to tell you where to go, and the services will all be available via the family hub or at the family hub, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
So whereas in the past you might have to find out different things, and one of the, as an example, one of the reasons that some people end up in family court and go, I wish I'd never come here, is because they didn't know about the alternatives. So one really positive idea, which Nav Mercer is pursuing, is that the support for families, the first port of call should be the family hub. And at the family hub, you can be told, well, here are your options. Could go and see a solicitor. You could do mediation. You could do,
Hmm.
I could make you an appointment with this other person who could then talk you through the options. Um, so that there's a greater chance that they'll encounter these many charities and sensible people who can depolarize the situation, help couples come to an agreement, because
Hmm.
everybody is clear, family court in the family court or not, that the moment it gets near the court, it polarizes, and the system is set up to polarize. Um, and you know what I mean? It's in the parents' interest to make their partner out to be an awful person. And so somebody described it, a barrister who had experience in the family court. He says there's this particular form you've got to fill in. He says it's not quite, but it's nearly go away and write down the five worst things you can say about your ex. Um,
Hmm.
and we know that there is a kind of there's feedback loop within the family court, so that you see this very common pattern of a couple apply to the court because they can't agree, and then after one or other parent has seen an advisor, suddenly all these accusations come out which were never there before. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's generated by the legal advisor because it's in their interest to do so, and they're acting on behalf of their client.
Hmm.
So it's all legal,
Yeah, and
but
it might open the door for um, legal funding if they've got low household income.
absolutely, yes. I mean, you probably know the graph showing that when legal aid was removed from the family,
Kentucky. Oh,
this
sorry,
is,
you're talking about something else. Go on.
this is Glasgow, about 10 years ago,
Mm.
2010, I think. And then they realized that they'd also removed family legal aid from cases involving domestic abuse. So they went, oh, sorry about that. Well, we'll put it back for cases of domestic abuse. So then if you look at the graph from that year on, the graph just goes up and up. And we talked to
Strange.
some I won't name them, but sort of biased feminist support groups, that 80% of cases involve domestic abuse. No, 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 they involve accusations.
Yeah.
So we're a long way off that, but that is a slightly hopeful route. The other thing which is reasonably hopeful, because like 2 or 3 years ago, we did the inquiry into boys' underachievement in school
Yeah.
and unearthed half a dozen schools that had closed the gap for their boys. And by analyzing the transcripts of their presentations, I was able to show that actually most of these schools were doing roughly the same thing, even though they didn't know each other and hadn't used the same research. In fact, some of them hadn't used any research at all. And so I pull that material together, and I'm just in the process of finalizing a book for Routledge on it, which I hope will come out in the next year. Um,
Excellent, Mike.
but again, don't hold your breath. It's a taboo subject, a seriously taboo subject. For the International Men's Day debate, I wrote to every MP a personalized email giving them this information about boys' education. The headline is the gap for boys is unnecessary, can be closed. People have done it. Here's how to do it. It wasn't mentioned by anybody speaking. They all mentioned men's mental health, as they do every year, because talking about men's mental health is not a taboo subject.
Mm.
But for some reason, boys' education is. And
Any thoughts on why? Do people want to see girls just doing better for a bit longer because it's girl power?
I don't think it's conscious.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, nobody's given a reason except things like, well, it doesn't matter so much for boys because they do better in their career anyway, which
Mm.
is kind of true because it's statistically true because on average, more boys than girls are quite competitive about their career.
Yeah.
And so you look at averages, on average, boys do progress. But today, even today, in the whatever it is, 18 to 24 group or some young group like that, girls are earning more than young women are earning more than young men at the moment already. So, um, but
Mm.
I can't quite say why, because when we asked the schools if they'd had any problem getting their staff on board with these changes, they said they thought that was an odd question because they hadn't. It's like when the biases, when teachers were made aware of the biases, and it was clearly a whole school problem which they wanted to deal with, they just tried to deal with it. Um, but but there's a professional body for teachers that I tried to get to run a webinar on this subject. They're just endless emails going nowhere. It was eventually done, but not by a member of the council. I can't remember. Not by one of their officials, but by a voluntary member of the council. Um, so teachers turned up to it. It was advertised and whatever. But one would have thought that people would come knocking on your door to say, "Hey, you've closed the gap. You know about closing the gap for boys, or one of the schools. Hey, how did you do it? This is really interesting." But just at the moment, it's not very interesting.
Mm.
But I imagine it's sort of just part of the anti-male narrative, if you know what I mean. It's just part of this, boys are toxic and, you know,
Boys are toxic and they want equity, not equality. But I imagine if you put numbers around it, I don't know how you could extrapolate the numbers, but over the male lifespan, if a boy, rather than becoming delinquent and addicted and imprisoned or homeless, he actually works and pays taxes all his life and has reasonable health and doesn't become abusive in his family and so on. Probably saves the taxpayer a fortune.
well, I agree. I mean, that was all written in my briefing to MPs, but nobody mentioned it. I mean, I mean, looking back at my own teaching career through the lens of these other schools, I
Mm,
realized that our school was exactly like all the rest of the schools. We all let the boys underachieve because that's what boys do. They mess around too much. They don't hand their homework in.
mm,
That's what boys are like. But these other schools refuse to accept that.
mm.
And they realize that, for instance, on average, boys' literacy is lower than girls. So they do a big push in year seven and year eight on literacy, with those kids. But they have to break the guidelines from Ofsted because Ofsted wants them to do history and French. And so, they have to take them out of something to do the
Mm.
extra literacy. But it's a no-brainer, isn't it? If the kid doesn't know enough words to understand what the teacher says, then they're not going to access the curriculum. I haven't got it now, but I remember in my teacher training, they showed you what it was like for a pupil who didn't understand only two or three words in the paragraph. You read the paragraph and they kind of had blurred out
Mm.
two words, and the paragraph makes no sense. And they said that's what it's like for a low language kid in your classroom,
5 days a week for
12 years.
yeah.
I mean, the national statistics are very clear as well. They do an assessment age 5, and it's called school readiness.
Mm.
75% of girls are school ready, 60% of boys. So we should have a national campaign to improve the literacy of low literacy kids, predominantly boys. So,
Why don't we just hold boys back a year or let them go in a year later?
yeah, that's called red shirting. And yeah, there is no evidence that that works. B, 60% of boys are school ready.
Okay, they just need different stuff. Yeah.
25% of girls are not school ready. It's not a boy girl thing. It's a more
Mm.
boy, less girl thing.
Yeah.
So if you take the not school ready, there's not even twice as many boys as girls. Um,
Mm.
so we should be doing stuff for non-school ready kids because we know that the main problem is language, and we know that in certain backgrounds and families, they just haven't been spoken to enough. You know what I mean? It's
They don't sit around and have dinner anymore. People in the family
Yeah,
don't.
and so some people just don't talk a lot, or the telly's on or
Mm.
whatever. So it's not even that they have a learning difficulty; it's just that they literally haven't learned the words. And we did speak to a guy called Trevor Lloyd who puts on, you know, sessions for primary school kids. He says you can make a difference in 6 weeks. And another time, about 10 years ago, I I went with a filmmaker to interview um, head teachers of schools that had won the award, Pupil Premium Award. That is, they'd done particularly well for their free school meal kids.
Mm.
And one particular teacher was explaining how he had got whatever measure it is for literacy in his school up from 40% to 90% in year six, I think. Um, and he did it by spending his pupil premium money employing anybody he could, who he described as dinner ladies, grannies, PhD students, and 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 a cleaner. Just anybody who will sit down with a child and listen to them read and help them with the words they don't know. It's not brain surgery. It's like what most mums and dads do whose kids do read well. They just haven't had the chance. I'm not saying that's universal. There are kids with learning difficulties.
Mm.
So yeah, so
Mm.
we're a very long way off that because it's a very easy fix. And as you say, at the bottom end, if you go into prisons, something like 80% of men in prisons left school with no reasonable qualifications. So it's difficult to say that things wouldn't improve if those boys had been better treated because emotionally what happens at school is that this constant failure turns you against the system.
Mm.
You have the sense that society is not for you.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
at the
shame and anger around that. And
Yes, and so they end up in the discipline system. So they're
yeah.
disciplined for not doing the work because avoiding doing the work is like a sensible thing. If you can't get it, then avoid. Intelligent lads will avoid and mess about and be really good messer abouters. The less intelligent lad will sit there sullen.
Mm.
But it's not the less able lad who will end up in prison. It's these bright, able low achievers with a lot of energy and drive who've just done badly at school. So they need to be enterprising enough to be a robber.
Yeah.
So that's sad. And at the top end, of course, we're simply not getting enough. At the moment, it's getting towards, I think, 55% female in university. So we're just not getting enough qualified doctors and engineers who are male. It's just, it's a stupid way to go about things.
Mm.
And you'd think it would be an easy sell. I can't precisely tell you why, but it's not.
Okay. Um, Anything else to share with us based on your your activities at the moment? Are you involved in anything else that may be
Well,
interesting for us to hear?
there's the CPRMB, the Centre for Policy Research on Men and Boys.
Oh yeah.
So about just over a year ago, Mark Brooks and I were talking because Richard Reeves had started the American Institute for Boys and Men after quite a successful book. I mean, that that's a lesson that people should learn is how to go about things so that you do get publicity. The
He's
way,
good at PR.
sorry?
Good PR.
Yes, yes, just going for it and also presenting the material as though it's perfectly normal,
Hmm.
not whining on about feminism or woke ideology or something, just going on about men and boys stuff. So he normalized it and got access to some reasonable funds, and so we wrote to him about August last year saying. We're thinking of starting a parallel institute for boys and men in the UK. Just wanted to check with you that you're not already doing one, or if you're not, then can you give us some advice? And he immediately replied saying, "Oh, I've been talking to this other guy, Nick Isles, and we should get together and it's just been amazing. I mean, in the autumn, just getting on a weekly call and hearing these people talking about names and amounts of money that I'd never even dreamt of. And I'm sort of sitting there taking the minutes. And it was launched in March this last year by West Streeting. It's a big launch in Central Hall, Westminster. Um, and the money hasn't quite flowed in as have been dreamed of, but I think it's going to flow in the spring.
Hmm.
Um, so we applied to be a charity institute for men and boys. Mark's quite musing on this. He just types in the box for the charity commissioners on the website. He typed institute, and a little box came up that said you can't use the word institute without special permission
From who?
from
The
the
Queen, the King, or
company's,
something?
company's house.
Oh, right.
It's because people had been abusing terms like academy or university or anyway, so they put about, I can't remember how many words into this category whereby you can't just use them. Well, obviously you can if you're just setting up a business or something, but you can't set up a charity. So we then had to sort of scratch around, well, what on earth are we going to call ourselves? We can't call ourselves Institute for Men and Boys. So we ended up with Centre for Policy Research on Men and Boys, which is rather a
Wordy.
yes,
But it sounds good.
gravitas, yes.
Yeah. And so when the money comes in, you're going to do commission research.
Not just that, we're also going to have a, like a more engagement office. At least have somebody's working on engagement on research. So
Great.
there's a big project going out on boys' education, wider than the one which we did, um, and involving more high-powered kind of people, like professors and stuff like that, like out of the league of where we were before.
Mm.
Um, so we'll
That's
have to
great.
see what we need to be sure of is because there's a lot of think tanks in London and they produce lovely reports which then get launched and then nothing happens. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
Mm.
But I think our experience in the APPG and particularly Mark's experience with the men's health strategy means that as long as we keep our eye on things, next year might be interesting.
Fantastic. Well done, Mike. Lots of good news from the
Yes,
past
of
3 years.
course. Well, for me personally, there's not a lot immediately going forward, but we'll see.
Mm. Okay. Thank you for the update. And where can people find you if they want to find out more or maybe even help or spread the word about the things you're talking about?
I think I shall have to, I don't know, give you an email address or something.
Okay.
They can they can look up All Party Group on Men and Boys. They can look up
Okay.
Equilaw UK um, and find me that way.
Okay. Good stuff. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, good luck with all these things that are in the pipeline, especially the
Yeah.
money flow in spring.
Yes.
Cheers, Mike.
Good. See you in a year.
See you in a year.